and berries on just over 39 acres. They also produce a full array of garden vegetables, many of them heirloom varieties raised naturally, as well as an assortment of berries, including raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, black, red, and white currants, mulberries, and elderberries. And now, here's Mark Scherzer.
Last Friday felt a bit like Bible Day at the farm. The day started with the news which many commentators have described as a story of biblical character, in which inordinately proud or entitled individuals are taught that they are not immune from the tribulations of regular folk. And those who ignore the rules, be they gods or the CDCs, pay a price for their willfulness. You all already know this story. The day ended with a small but out of the ordinary event that, like many Bible stories, invites any number of interpretations. Some will see a miracle where others see a perfectly explainable part of the natural order, but anyone who gives it a thought can find a parable. It was the day our blind ewe, Aisha, led the flock back to the barn. It was one of those magnificent early October days when everything looked crisp, even the dark clouds that brought a short cloudburst, set as they were against the backdrop of clear blue. The oranges and yellows of fall, seemingly peaking about 10 days too early this year, were vivid in the tree line. In the late afternoon hours, when I do chores, the angle of the descending sun sometimes acts like a spotlight on the scene and casts sharp and rapidly shifting shadows. From the barn where I had deposited a handful of grain treats in each feed bowl, I could see, spotlit on the horizon, the sheep, looking like an assemblage of small boulders, grazing in the tall grass of the north pasture. I could have gone back to the house and called it a day, knowing that the flock would find its way back to the barn in due course, but I always find it something of a comfort to watch them enjoy the treat and to know that they're all well and together. Most days, if they're closer, I just have to shout, "Hey, girls!" And if I catch the attention of one of them, especially at feed time, she will begin moving back toward the barn, which is home base. The others, seeing any one of their number moving in a deliberate and directed way, will fall into line and follow, with the tentative moves eventually transforming into a group charge. At that point, the sound of their hooves is reminiscent of the sound we all grew up hearing on television westerns, when the posse assembles and gallops off to chase the bad guys. But the sheep this Friday afternoon were too far away for my voice to carry, and it was a perfect moment to enjoy a walking the fields. So with the nearly empty feed bucket in hand, I went up there. As I approached, I realized that, as often happens, Aisha was somewhat removed from the rest of the flock. She probably had not even realized yet that she had become separated, as she and the others were so busy munching on grass. This time, fortuitously, Aisha was perhaps 100 feet closer to me than the others. I called to her, and she started coming in my direction. The rest noticed the movement and began to follow along with us. I, and I'm sure Aisha, could hear the sound of their collective hooves behind us, almost propelling us along the path they had worn in the pasture. They did not break into their characteristic run a few hundred feet north of the barn, I suspect because they could see the feed bucket in my hand, and they were anxious to stay close to the source of the treat. And so it was that blind Aisha, who usually trails well behind the rest of the flock in their migrations, led them all the way back to the barn. She followed the sound of my voice, but also the sound of the hoofbeats that stayed close behind her the whole way. I wondered if this was actually what effective leadership is really about, the leader being attentive to the sound of her followers' footsteps. Or perhaps the lesson is instead that herd mentality means the group will follow even a blind leader, one who may or may not, in turn, be guided by benevolent instincts. And how nice for me to personify in this parable the benevolent instincts. I'll leave the other lessons that may be drawn from this event to the listener. But to me, the remarkable aspect of the event was my own response. My parents gave me a religious upbringing, sending me to Hebrew school and ensuring that I had a proper bar mitzvah in an Orthodox synagogue, but they did so for my mother's parents' sake. My parents themselves were resolute atheists and raised us in that belief. I remain true to their teachings today. Yet I found myself ending the day Friday as I began it, thinking, maybe there is a God.
Maybe. This is a second reading of the first paragraph. So you could start it, and if it's better than the first one, I'll just edit it in.
Okay, great. Last Friday felt a bit like Bible Day at the farm. The day started with the news which many commentators have described as a story of biblical character, in which inordinately proud or entitled individuals are taught that they are not immune from the tribulations of regular folk. And those who ignore the rules, be they gods or the CDCs, pay a price for their willfulness. You all already know this story.
Agriculture is underwritten by Chicana Farms, LLC, a small-scale producer of heritage-bred livestock and a wide array of vegetables and berries on just over 39 acres in Germantown, New York. More information, 518-537-3815.